This is a demonstration of how to use the beam swap functionality of stability.com.au. So the first thing that we're presented with is essentially a disclaimer saying that you are a qualified person to fill in this form. So you'll have to press accept to continue. And we just work our way through the form, reading all the instructions and answering all the questions. So first question, what type of structure is the beam used in? So I'm going to say that this is for a deck. Then the next question, are all of the following statements true for this project? The beam is for a building that is less than or equal to 2 stories high. The strength and spacing of lateral restraints to the beam have not been changed, such as floor fixings to the top of the beam or stud spacings to a column. So what this is when you have a beam, the lateral restraints to the beam actually make the beam stronger. So you can see here in this first one we've got a beam here, and it's only laterally restrained at each end, which means the beam can buckle out easier. Once we add more lateral restraints, it becomes harder and harder for the beam to buckle out sideways, and so it actually makes the beam stronger to have lateral restraints. So for this question, it's important to be sure that the lateral restraints to the beam are not reduced in strength or are not made further apart or less of them, because that could make the beam weaker. So this is particularly a consideration if you're, say, moving from a steel beam to a timber beam. The change of beam material will not negatively affect the fire rating of a structure. So, for example, an engineer may have specified a steel beam for a a steel beam for a deck in a bow zone to get a certain bow rating. So you just have to check that changing from one material to another won't reduce the fire rating of the building. The change of beam material will not mean that corrosion or rot is more likely, e.g. changing a timber beam to a steel beam within 5 kilometers of the coast. So essentially this is a durability question. So if you're changing from one beam to another, it's important to make sure that that change won't shorten the lifespan of the beam. So for example, if you were changing from a hardwood to a LVL or a softwood in a area that's going to be very wet, like an outdoor deck under trees or something like that, it could encourage rot. Or for example, if you were doing a deck where the engineer had specified timber because it's a beachfront property or something, you can't just go to any old steel beam. It would have to be treated to withstand the coastal corrosiveness of the environment. So it's important to make sure that when you do a beam swap, you're not reducing the lifespan of the beam. If timber is to be used, timber should be treated appropriately. So that's related to the question above. So there are these 2 websites that are given for guidance on how to choose which timber treatment is required for your use. The current beam has been designed as per the relevant standards. So essentially that just says that the current beam that you've got that you're going to swap for a new one has to have been properly designed. The beam is for use as a beam and not as a column, strut, tension or torsion member. And bending is primarily about the strong axis. So essentially, for example, if you have a 150 by 50, the 150 is up and down and the load is coming on top. You're not turning it on its side so that the 50 mils is up and down and the loading is on the weak axis of the beam. So I'm going to say yes, that's true for all of these. We can then choose how many beams we want to change. I'm going to say we want to change 2 beams. Maybe the first beam is called beam 1. This is just the beam reference that is, for example, on your structural engineering drawings or something. The beam support type. So you just scroll through this and choose which support type applies to your beam. What it means is how is the beam being supported at each end. So I'm going to say that it's bearing on a wall or another beam. The bearing length. So this is the length of the beam that's sitting on the wall at each end. So I'm going to say that at each end it's got maybe it's got 50 mils sitting at each end. I'll say that it's currently a steel beam. I'll choose my grade. I'll choose my section type. I'll say maybe it's a U. Maybe it's been specified as a UB 180/16. And perhaps I want to change it from a steel beam to a timber beam. So I'll enter my bearing length. Maybe my bearing length is still 50. And I'll change it to timber. Maybe I have some access to F27s, a hardwood, seasoned. And perhaps the depth of the beam I have is, I don't know, 300 deep by 100 wide. Maybe you've got access to some big beams. So I'll fill in the information for the next beam. So again, the current beam, we fill in the current beam first, and then we fill in the new beam. So essentially the beam we want to swap it to. So I'm going to say that maybe this is a joist, so maybe it's called J1, and it's hanging on joist hangers. Maybe the bearing length was 35 mils. So I'm going to say it's currently a timber. Let's say that it's a MGP 10 and the depth is 140 by 45. And let's say I want to swap it to an LVL. So I'll go through and I'll choose an LVL 13, and let's try a 200 by 45 perhaps. And once you've filled in all the fields and you're happy, you can press calculate, and this will give you the results. So you can see here I've got all passes, which means that it's all fine. It's fine to swap from this current section for B1 to the new section, and similarly for beam 2. So if I were to, say for example, have a beam that was too small, maybe I'm trying a 150 by 50, and I press calculate, it'll come up as fails here. So essentially what this is doing is it's checking whether your new beam is as strong or stronger than your old beam. So if it's as strong or stronger in these parameters, then it's okay to swap them out. If it fails in any of these parameters, then you have to go back to your engineer or whoever designed the beam in the first place to check if you can swap it out. So sometimes you'll get a passing in all items except for bearing, in which case you'll just have to check with the original designer that the new bearing is okay. Rightio, so I'll change this beam back to my nice strong beam, and you can see you can change them around as necessary. Oh, I failed in shear. Okay. So once I've filled all that out and I'm happy with my beam selections, I can press save, and I'll get this message that says the beam swap has been added to the project, which means it's been saved correctly. And I can go through here and I can see my report, and I can see that the beam swaps have been added to this table, and I can press print PDF to get access to it. For this project, I've already paid the fee. However, if you have not paid the fee yet, parts of your report won't be filled out, and you won't be able to print it off. So in which case, just save the project so that it doesn't disappear, and then press the pay button. And then once you come back to stability.com.au, you'll be able to see this report and also print the PDF. So I'll print the PDF now. That means that it's been downloaded to my downloads, and yeah, this is this certificate can now be used to show that you're allowed to swap from one beam type to another beam type. So this is handy for, let's say you have access to one grade of timber but not another grade of timber, but your engineer has specified a grade that you don't have access to. So you can do this, get the certificate straight away saying that it's okay to swap from one type to another. And if you at any stage you have any questions or any difficulties, feel free to give us a call or an email, and we'd be happy to help you out with it. Our contact details are on your homepage down the bottom.